Okay, well, we're going to get started. We're just going to take like a couple of minute break between each session, okay? So our next panel is how to develop student housing, and we've got a terrific panel here now. We're talking about experienced guys that live the student housing business every day. We have Armond Charbonneau from Texas, from Diamond Realty Investments. Beside him is Greg Blais from Ambling University Development Group in Georgia. And next to them is our own Brad McGill from Rock Advisors, and Brad is our student housing specialist, and he does the majority of our student housing transactions in our firm. What we're going to do is we're going to ask Armond first and then Greg to make a short presentation on their company, what they do, and they'll show you some of the product that they're developing, and then we're going to go to a question and answer session with them. So Greg, if we could start with you first, and welcome and thanks very much for participating in our conference here.
Good morning, everyone. And Derek, I thank you for having us. Everybody hear me? Can everybody see me? A little more importantly. Again, my name is Greg Blais. I guess they're going to be queuing up the presentation here momentarily. We are located in Georgia. We do student housing for a living. We've been doing student housing on campus since 1997. We've been doing student housing off campus at different periods through that number of years. We started originally off campus, and now we are robustly active again in the off-campus environment. Next slide, please. We've been fortunate to, we're approaching $2 billion of student housing projects in that same time frame. Again, a large majority of those are on campus. We've worked in 20 states and growing, and over 35,000 beds. It's hard to keep up with the statistics sometimes, but we're proud that they continue to grow. And we're active. We've got about 10 projects combining on-campus focus right now and off-campus development focus, with a couple deliveries still to come for this fall semester in August in the States. Next slide, please. Do I have a clicker? Oh, I do. Thank you. A couple of the projects that we have going on off campus, this is a unique project, and it's much akin to what we've been hearing about in Canada with urban infill development. This one is in downtown Atlanta, obviously a huge metropolis. What we're doing here is we are renovating an old historic hotel into student residences. This project will be completed, this portion of the project will be completed for August use in 2013. And then we are also under construction currently adjacent to this with an 18-story tower, which will be delivering in fall of 2014. This is unaffiliated with the university, I guess competing for students with them. And it is actually closer to their core academic campus than some of their own residence halls. So this is a fantastic opportunity. You can see the urban nature of what we're talking about there. I know some of you may have developed here in Toronto, much akin to that environment. We are also wrapping up construction over the next couple of months in Bloomington, Indiana, an off-campus environment project there. This one is mixed use. There is some retail associated with it. One unique feature of this is in collaboration with the municipality. We donated a city park at the front door of the development back to the city of Bloomington. We have a parking deck with a wrapper building around it. A wrapper building simply is what it sounds like. There's student residences that flank 3 sides of the parking facility. This is a combination of product type. We have townhomes as well as typical apartment style units. This project is highly amenitized, perhaps one of the most highly amenitized projects we've ever done, and it was the market in Bloomington for the competition for students dictated an extremely highly amenitized facility. Resort-style pools, those kinds of things. We're also about to break ground, knock on this wood here. We're supposed to close this week on a project adjacent to the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Again, a mixed-use project. We enjoy, well, enjoy may be an interesting use of words. We like to do projects where it's infill environment. We're demolishing a building that has been downtrodden for a number of years. We're joint venturing with the landowner here to develop a mixed-use project where you see ground floor retail on their main street, where this is a pedestrian site, the campus. The Georgia State and this project are pedestrian sites. The Bloomington project is probably just outside pedestrian walking distance, but we certainly are, like every other developer, seeking pedestrian sites. This project's actually on campus. We completed a project with Georgia State University. This, at the time, was the largest student housing project in the United States. 2,000 beds, 750 parking spaces, and a few square feet of retail on the ground floor. This was a $170 million project that was completed in 2007. This project, the concept of the project actually started in 2004, so this was a 3-year development process to completion. Again, this project was in concert with the university. They actually own and operate this project. Another main campus that we worked with, University of Georgia. We also do other auxiliary enterprise facilities on campuses to include parking decks and dining halls. This is a fantastic example of where we've done both of those facilities in concert with a student residence of 1,200 beds. While located in Georgia, we do travel. We are also worked in the University of South Dakota in concert with their foundation. Much of these on-campus projects are financed through the tax-exempt bond financing mechanism. Be happy to talk with you about that after the conference. But this would achieve LEED certification, LEED Gold certification. So we are familiar with some of the standards that Wayne was talking about this morning, earlier this morning, on what the campus's expectations are. And we certainly build those into our projects on campus. Recently completed a mixed project, parking deck, historic renovation of an old quad of residence halls, as well as new housing, demo and replacement. That is one of the larger trends in the United States right now, is the replacement nature of the projects on college campuses. And I will turn it over to...
Great. Thanks very much. So our next speaker is Armond Charbonneau from Diamond Realty. Armond?
Hi, I'm Armond Charbonneau with Diamond Realty Investments. Diamond is a wholly owned subsidiary of Mitsubishi Corporation. We've been investing in North America's multifamily housing since the early 90s and got started in student housing in the late 1990s. Since then, we've invested in about 20-some properties around the U.S. and currently have a portfolio with about 10,000 beds in it. We started, of course, doing garden-type projects, what we call satellite projects that were 3-4 miles from campus, and then have since followed the industry trend that's emerged recently of getting closer to campus, of being at pedestrian locations. We call it on the beach, and that we're and have to go up doing mid-rise and high-rise projects.
Armond, the microphone has to touch your tonsils.
Okay. Obviously, when you do student housing, you get a lot of students, and here's kind of what one of our pool parties looked like a few years ago. And you can also kind of see the scope of the pools and the amenities. Obviously, in Canada, we wouldn't expect pools as large as you see here. Branding is important. We just rebranded this property, and you can see we were able to get some of the winners from the pool party to help with the launching of the sign. Hope you all noticed the sign. So we've been doing this for a few years. Everything that we do as joint ventures with development partners. We are a pure equity shop and don't really get involved with the development. We want our partners to do all the entitlements, the design, et cetera, et cetera. But we do look at it and we do say whether we think it's going to be viable or not before investing. Our purpose-built student housing development experience includes 14,500 beds and 21 projects. We've got 10 projects under construction now, and we keep a portfolio of 5,112 beds that we recapitalized with a pension fund a year and a half ago. The cash flow on these are really pretty spectacular. Even with very low leverage, we're able to deliver a 9 annual cash on cash, 9+ cash on cash return, which is attractive to pension funds that now are looking at 3% bond portfolios. We're actively seeking development JVs at Canadian universities. We think there's a great opportunity here. Canada, of course, it has a wonderful economy and is a very advanced country. But in terms of student housing, it's 1993 here. And we think that there's tremendous opportunities to do the things that have been learned in the United States over the last 20 years, bring those to Canada to have successful investments. And, saying that the Canadian student housing space is 20 years behind the U.S., that will catch up very fast. And we see that catching up very fast as the architecture and the developers come up here and start doing the same thing. What is purpose-built student housing? On our suburban sites that are satellite sites 3 miles from campus, you got to have these features. Obviously, a nice leasing office. We call it the leasing trap. We want them to come in and sign. We want them to see the amenities, to see the apartments. You got to have at least in the southern United States, you got to have a great swimming pool. You got to have a resort-style swimming pool that just, and then gates are important. You do the gates for the parents, not the kids. The kids don't really care about the gates, but the parents like seeing that. Sandlot volleyball court, very, very important. We've got 2 on this property. Well, 2 pools, 2 on this property. In the interiors, obviously, they're going to be living in the apartments. They're going to want good stuff. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of talk up here about 5-bedroom apartments. We've got a handful of those in our high-rises, but really the premium unit is the, it's really the one, but beside the one, it's really the 2-bedroom that's the best. Third is considered third best, fourth best. Although the sophomores really like the 4 bedrooms because the party goes on all the time and they like that. But by the time they're seniors, they want to graduate and they don't like that. But these are the way it lays out. We talk a lot about bed bath parity as being an absolute must-have. Every bed has to have its own private bath. And that's the way we like to see these properties designed. We want a full kitchen. We want our properties to be best in class. And now to be best in class, you have to have granite countertops, very nice cabinetry, double stainless steel sinks. It needs to be just pretty much like a Class A conventional apartment. Laundry, of course, in the washer dryer, full-size washer dryers in the units are a must, and we furnish the units. Furnishing the units is a necessity as we see it from a number of standpoints. One being the wear and tear. If you let outside furniture come in, your building's going to get banged up a lot faster with all the move-ins and move-outs, and then also it's going to look bad. You're eventually going to have the indoor furniture become the outdoor furniture, and we just don't want that look. Here's one of our pools, fountains, the landscaping. Do we overdo it for the kids? Yeah. Our senior executives come out from Tokyo and they just say that kids are too spoiled and they shouldn't have it. But if you don't have it, you're not gonna do well, and they know that, and so they're good with it. Here's one of our volleyball courts, sand-lot volleyball. These get a lot of use in the summertime. Here's an interior for our clubhouse, or what we call the leasing trap. You know, we want them to come in, see this type of living. Interestingly, what happened with these satellite properties that are built on 20-acre sites that are maybe 3 miles from campus, back 15 years ago, we were saying, well, if we're not going to be that close to campus, how do we attract these college kids to come out here and pay our rent rates? And so what we decided to do was, the industry decided to do, was give them the resort lifestyle. And you can see that from the pools and all that, the resort lifestyle. And it worked really well. Of course, the university, the academics at the universities, the people who run the universities are very miffed by the resort lifestyle. They just don't see that as part of college, but our college kids do now. Fitness center, very important. Every time I'm talking to somebody and they say, well, we didn't put a fitness center in our property, or we don't have one designed in our property because the school has a wonderful athletic facility, we know they don't understand student housing, because the kids want that there where they live. Kitchens, well, this one's a little older property, so you don't see the granite countertop here that I mentioned, but the newer projects are granite countertops. But basically, you got to have a full kitchen. This is a model that's built into the clubhouse. Obviously, if you've got a large student housing property, in some cases, some of ours are pretty large, like 900 beds, you're going to have to run 2,700, 3,000 tours a year to get it leased up. And so we found it's best to build the model into the clubhouse, so anytime they come in, while they're waiting for a leasing agent to talk to them, they can tour through the model on their own, and then we'll get a leasing agent to try to sign them up. Shuttle buses. We, on some of these projects that are 3 miles from campus, in this case, this one's actually 5 miles from campus, we were having a little bit of an occupancy problem, and we sat down and we calculated, if we buy 2 shuttle buses, we need to increase our occupancy 2% on this project to pay for the shuttle buses. We got these 2 shuttle buses, branded them, with our brand on them, made them attractive, and our occupancy on that property went from 89 to 99 the next year. So the shuttle bus was very important. Also with the shuttle bus, not only do it's a way to bridge that distance gap. We have a rolling billboard going through campus a couple dozen times every day. And so we're able to advertise on campus with this type of wrap around the bus. We also run the Friday 2 o'clock in the morning bus down to the bars, so that cuts down on the people going to jail. And they like that. I mean, that's a big, the drunk bus is a big drawing card. I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
So, you can just see from the product that the panel has developed that these guys sort of know what they're talking about. So we're going to use the rest of the time just direct questions to you guys. If any questions from the audience, please just come on up. And okay, so the first question is, when you're developing student housing, how do you determine that a school is sort of worthy of building student housing off campus? What are the metrics you're going to use to determine depth of market, rents, and things like that? Greg, let's start with you, please.
Can you hear me? Does that
Yes.
work? Yeah, I think there's a few things you need to immediately look at, and one is if you're looking at building off campus, you're certainly looking at the surrounding competition, who's there, what their product type is, what their success trends have been over the last few years, depending how old they are. So you're certainly analyzing the matrix of the competition, but you also are keying in on the institution itself. Several factors that are obviously important are what are the enrollment trends and what have they been for the institution over a 5-year period of time. If you're seeing a spike, then obviously you're probably seeing some competitive properties built, but that spike is also a positive trend that you're looking for. Another is retention rates, believe it or not. If you're looking at a school and they lose more than half of their freshman class, but they have a freshman on-campus requirement, so they're not even eligible to live with you anyway, and all of a sudden the pool is reduced for sophomores and juniors, that's certainly a trend that you want to be keen on. So the higher retention rates, the enrollment trends of the campus, what kind of living policies they have, and additionally, what kind of rental rates are they charging on campus? Because presumably you can charge a bit of a premium for the highly more amenitized projects off campus.
Okay, Armond, what's the research you do to determine whether you're going to build? Yeah, son.
Well, size matters.
Yes, I can see from your
we-
pictures it does, yeah.
Yeah, we want, well, but I mean, in terms of the school, we want big schools, lots of students, because in a lot of cases, we're going to be skimming for the highest income, those willing to pay the higher rates. We're not building something that appeals to everybody. The other thing, in terms of size, we really look at how many full-time undergrads are there. Part-time students who live in town and commute from home, they don't do anything for us. Grad students really don't do anything for us. If we're building, a property with a lot of 3 and 4 bedrooms, the grad students don't want that. And that's also, the grad students are a very price-sensitive market. So we want to see a lot. We love universities that are that are not in urbanized areas, because urbanized areas you're going to get a lot of commuting from home. But if you so we like to see it in a smaller town.
So you're looking for the larger schools, and you're aiming at the top 10% of the market, top 20% of the kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, Brad, any comments on zeroing on which universities to build in?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, well, I'd first like to thank these guys for coming up here, because we have a lot to learn from you guys. You guys have seen, the ins and outs. But I think what I'd like to echo is just understand the fine details of the marketplace. Derek will keep mentioning this over and over today. The depth of the market is crucial. So.
Okay, good. All right, so let's talk about site selection, because this is the most location-sensitive business other than airport parking, right? Like, I mean, you pretty much have to be close to the school. Armond, it's interesting what you've done by going further away and things like that. But let's just have a discussion on site selection. Most of our universities tend to be urban. The areas around the university tend to be pretty nice. They tend to have pretty strong ratepayers there because it's the university crowd sort of thing. Our colleges are probably built more in the 60s or a little more suburban, but even then the city's built around it, right? So finding a site can be difficult. Talk about maybe, how you've gone about choosing sites. When there are no sites, what have you done to be creative? Maybe some conversions you've done, and just a couple of examples of difficult universities to develop in, because the university was great, but the land was difficult to get to. Armond, why don't you start?
One interesting play that I see is converting hotels.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of one in particular that I saw in Lubbock. We're not invested in it, but just very nicely done. And you know, it's mostly, you know, this was an older hotel right outside the front gate of campus. It converted pretty well. Remember, every room has its own bath already, so that's a big plus from the startup. You still lose a lot of rooms because you got to put in kitchens and that sort of thing. But that's one way to do it. We are also doing an office building to student housing conversion in a large city.
Great. Okay, later on today I'm going to talk about a conversion in Montreal that was an office building to student housing and so on. Greg, maybe you can talk about the hotel conversion that you mentioned to start with, and then any other comments?
Yeah, and that particular Cortland project we shared with you, that was a project where obviously there's not many opportunities for greenfield in downtown Atlanta. So you had to get creative and find an infill site. And we did find that historic hotel that had been looked upon by other developers through the years. We were fortunate enough to make it happen. Other things that we look for, because there aren't very many greenfield sites, even in the suburban campuses anymore, because of what you just said, Derek, is that the fact the city's growing up around these campuses. We have had success looking at older shopping plazas, other types of shopping plazas in that you don't demolish the whole plaza. You may redevelop a portion of it, extend into the parking lot. It revitalizes the plaza around you, which is an amenity built in for the student populace inhabiting your building. And then obviously land assemblage, those kinds of things. Just in the brief time I've spent up here in Canada, that's obviously going to be a primary way of getting enough property to build a critical mass project. So we've done a lot of that down in the States too. Very seldom are you going to go find a 10 to 15 acre tract that has been farmland and it's adjacent to campus. We all look for them, but we've yet to find them. Yeah.
Brad, you spend a fair bit of time looking for land for these developers. Talk about some of the site selection challenges and opportunities.
Right. So, I mean, further to Greg's point, you know, urban infill is a challenge always. And actually, we just helped a developer assemble quite a large parcel of land. There were single-family homes in Waterloo market. And the challenge was just working with the individual owners, because everybody has a different set of expectations and obviously different price points. So handling those transactions are always difficult.
How many homes are you talking about?
21 properties.
So you bought 21 properties individually?
Yes.
In the block?
Yeah.
Good. That's a student housing guy. Okay. So I have a question for you about distance to the school. Okay, we talk in kilometers, right? So good luck with that. Some people say that, you know, you've got to be close to the school, right? Armond, you talked about a shuttle bus. So talk about, from a school that's sort of non-transit oriented, from a walking distance, right? How far can you be from the school and still be competitive? It's about 1/6 of a mile to a kilometer, by the way. Yeah.
Some schools, the way they lay out, Derek, you just cannot get a walkable site. Some of these schools, it's just the way it lays out. You can't either be walkable to the university, or you can't be walkable to any. Maybe you can be walkable to one small section of it.
Yes.
So most of these larger schools, even if you are walkable, there's still a shuttle bus in there. It just depends. The other thing that's very crucial is to be nearby the entertainment district.
Sure.
We built one project that was very successful. It had 1 million square feet of retail within walking distance of it, including a 12-screen theater right outside the front door. But it was still about 2 or 3 miles from campus. We bridged that with a shuttle bus. Had a very successful investment that built.
Greg, something about location.
Yeah, I echo everything that Armond just said, but I would also say that product differentiation will allow you to get a little further from the edge of campus. You know, if you're a kilometer away and everybody's seeking those sites interior to that, We've seen in the United States the birth of the cottage-style product,
Yes.
which inherently is further away from campus because they require a larger tract of land. And then it is what it sounds like. It's a bunch of individualized homes that will have 4, 5, or 6 residents in them, and a shuttle bus bringing you back to campus. But again, simply saying, product differentiation oftentimes will cause you to be able to compete with those closer to campus, so long as you are providing transportation. I mean, that's critical.
Okay, at about 5 to 11, I'm going to ask you this question, so I want you to start thinking about it now, right? We've had people from all over Canada, all over America. They paid a lot of money to be here today. I'm going to ask you to give one piece of advice on developing student housing that you've never said publicly before, okay? So you have about 20 minutes, all right? So I want to talk about this idea of distance from the university, because this becomes a real challenge. So you talked about saying, you've got to be within a kilometer or 2 of the school, right? But I'm going to make this statement, tell me if you agree or disagree. It depends on the type of walk. So if you're going 1 kilometer on St. Catherine Street in Montreal, that's not a far walk. You've got coffee shops, beautiful stores, and things like that. If you're on a 1 kilometer walk on a country road in Thorold, that's a long walk on a winter's day. Talk about that, about location and the distance again.
Well, that's why I like to build in the southeast United States. We don't have all the white stuff that falls out of the sky.
Right.
No, in all seriousness, though, quite honestly, students in the United States are fairly well trained to walk from within a mile of campus. I mean, they can do that short of 15 minutes. Now, everybody in the United States also has 2 cars that they bring to school. So, that's, yeah.
So how much parking are you providing for the average student?
Not 1-to-1, generally speaking.
One bed to 1 car?
Yeah, right. We're generally not hitting 100% ratio on the bed to parking space. A lot of the municipal codes will dictate what those parking requirements are. On campus, we've seen the birth of parking decks in association with resident facilities. Those will provide 1-to-1 and oftentimes more for the faculty and staff component. So one of the big drivers in the United States is the fact that everybody brings a car, if not literally a car and a half, and it's uncanny. So.
But you're talking now about suburban southern universities. That's not going to happen at Johns Hopkins or the University of Chicago or something like that.
Yeah, and again, not to dominate the microphone, but yeah, up in the northern climate of the United States, and presumably would be similar in the climate in Canada, is students are much more akin to not bringing vehicles to campus. The parking requirements are much less. The dependence on transportation is so much greater. And again, that's why it's key to be close to a bus line, or whatever kind of municipal transit systems in place.
Great. Ryan, I'm going to ask you a question. How much parking is required per bed in Waterloo?
We average 1 parking space per unit, so under the old rules, that was 5 beds for 1 car.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Armond, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, on parking, if you've got a satellite project 5 kilometers from the school, you're going to need 1.1 to 1 parking. If you have an urbanized walk to campus location, you might get by with 1/3 to 1. The kids, more than 1/3 will bring their cars, but they're willing to park off-site because they can walk back and forth to school, and they can walk back and forth to the entertainment districts. So it depends on how close you are to campus.
Brad, any comments on that?
Yeah, I guess the best thing to do would be to talk to the local municipality, the development department, understand what zoning things are in there, the bylaws that are a requirement for parking, and each market's going to be different.
So I think that may be a difference between Canada and America. I think you could build an apartment building in downtown Toronto or downtown Montreal and supply 0 parking for 500 students. I think you would get away with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because parking, you don't win on parking in terms of cost-wise and so on, right? Okay, good. All right, so let's switch over to talk a little bit about working with universities. And I'm just going to ask sort of a couple of questions together. So how do you approach university when you want to work with them, right? Are you generally responding to RFPs, or are you initiating the discussion with the school? And what advice would you give developers who want to build on campus in joint ventures? Greg, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, let me hit the easy one first. When working with on an on-campus environment, it's done through a competitive process through the RFP. State-owned property and the laws in the United States dictate competitive bid for hiring and procurement, unless it's done through their 501c3 foundation. So generally speaking, on campus, it's done through a competitive process. In an off-campus environment, in every case that we've had, we have approached the school, if nothing else, to serve as a good neighbor, let them know we were coming, but also to try to gather some information from them so that we were shoring up our thoughts on our own projects. But in any event, we still like to talk to them about their interest in marketing to the property. If there would be any type of affiliation agreement, those are hard to come by, but if you don't ask, you won't get it. And co-branding, co-marketing, being on their websites, those kinds of things at a minimum, we've had some general success. Oftentimes it comes with a fee. The universities, if you do it for one off campus, their mindset is you got to do it for everybody, and that's a revenue opportunity for them, so they'll charge for those marketing opportunities on their websites. But if nothing else, be a good neighbor and try to extract some data out of the institutions to shore up your own thoughts on your project.
Okay, great. Okay, so Armond, next question for you. You finance student housing as an equity partner, right? What makes you decline a student housing offering even if you like the site?
Sponsorship is very important. We've got to have a sponsor that has a good track record in developing multifamily. We also want to see, a balance sheet where they can step in if there's a problem. Other than that, if we like the school and we like the site and we like the market, we're
Okay. And what kind of returns do you expect as an equity partner? And how long are you in the deals?
We want to get a return that's at least 1.5 times our equity, our paid-in equity. We're comfortable holding for a few years, but right now the market is so hot that we're selling them before we're completing them.
So that's interesting. So you just described maybe what we call a pre-sale or a forward sale here. Are you able to tie up the land, do all the entitlement work, and at that point do some sort of a forward sale?
No, sorry. What I mean is we've got the project under construction, we've got it fully leased, but it's not finished yet.
It's not stabilized,
and the
right.
buyers are just all over us to buy.
Okay.
So we're like, okay.
What's the early? We've got a lot of developers here who have development expertise. They might own a piece of land near the university, but they don't necessarily know the student housing business. They may not even be in the apartment business. So they want to build the buildings, and they're coming to us and saying, we want to sell it empty. Right? Now, we've done that on conventional apartments because that's an easier business to understand. Depth of market isn't such an issue. If you're wrong, you'll just kind of spread the pain. In the student housing, you see what I'm saying, over other buildings in the area. In the student housing business, if you're wrong, there is no plan B. Nobody else wants a 4-bedroom, 4-bath apartment, right? So is it possible, do you think, Jed, Greg, maybe from your experience, can you do a forward sale on purpose-built luxury student housing where you could attract the buyer earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. In the United States, in fact, we're doing that on a couple of instances. The velocity of dollars in the United States is just unreal. I mean, there's more money out there to be spent on student housing than any other asset class in multifamily. So, yeah, absolutely, Derek. There is opportunity. In fact, we've teed a couple of our projects up to actually have forward sale upon completion of construction and are providing a rent roll to the buyer at a certain level.
Right. Who's taking the lease-up risk?
We are.
You are. Okay, so you're doing it so based on a certain NOI and a certain cap rate that you've agreed to in advance, you're going to agree to a sale price?
That's correct.
Okay, and what do you do about things like taxes, operating costs, and things like that? Do you just project them all out, or are some agreed to up front, and are some the actual number once you're stabilized?
Yeah, that's right. You do your best to project them, and in the United States, you're able to get a pretty good tax value going into the project through working with the tax assessor within each municipality. And there's actually opportunities in certain environments to get tax abatements Not 100%. I'll give you an example. The Cortland project in downtown Atlanta off campus to Georgia State, we've actually worked out a deal with the tax department there whereby in the first year we're paying 50% of the tax bill, and for the next 10 years it only goes up 5%.
Yes.
So we won't pay 100% of the tax value of the project until year 10, year 11.
One more question for you. So let's just assume that your pro forma says $2 per square foot. That's sort of the price you might get in some of our suburban markets. And then on the lease up, you exceed that and you 10 or $2.20 per square foot. So is the price typically changed on the sale based on that 20 cents capped? Is there a sharing formula? I know it goes all over the place, but just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and again, we enter, our example is you enter into the forward sale at a certain NOI number. If you exceed that NOI number, you do, as a developer, we are getting the benefit to some percentage of excess revenue.
Okay, so you'll split that. Anything over $2, you'll split with the end buyer.
To some level, yes.
Okay, fair enough. And every deal is different. Yeah. Armond, any comment on that? That's something we just don't really do here. You know, the student housing business is new, so typically here we'll build it, lease it up, stabilize to some extent, and then sell it. But there are many more people willing to build it, but aren't holders and don't want to be involved in that lease-up risk, especially early on when it's your first development built.
Student housing in the United States, it used to be that you had to have 2 lease-ups before
Right,
anybody
yes.
would buy it. You had to lease it up once, and everybody says, well, I know everybody wants to live at the newest, nicest, brand-new thing. So you got to lease it up a second time. Then you could go sell it based on your second lease-up.
Yes.
The buyers threw that caution out the window a few years ago, and now they'll buy off of 1 lease-up. And that's what's created a very short holding period. You know, we've got the last deal that we sold, we held 19 months from the time we stuck a shovel in the ground to the time we walked out of the title company. These can be very rapid deals.
And does that rapidity or get better as you understand the marketplace more? So initially you're saying you had that 2 years of stabilization. As the industry matured, people were buying product earlier.
Right.
So that's what we can expect from our marketplace, would you think?
Right. Yes. The timelines are compressing, the prices are rising.
Okay, so for the developers out there, I think what they're saying is the timeline will compress. Right now, because the buyer pool is not as large and maybe not as experienced, they're saying we want our product built, leased up, and stabilized, right? As the industry matures, would you expect that now, instead of 2 years of stabilization, they'll go to 1 year of stabilization, or they'll go just get leased up, or we'll join you?
Well,
you
and
know.
remember, stabilization happens in September.
Yes.
So
that's a
you
good
might
point, yes.
break ground in March,
Yes.
and in the U.S. most schools start in August. So stabilization happens in August.
Yes.
It's not like a 400-unit apartment property where you lease it up and then you got some turnover, so you got to do a second phase of the lease up. I mean, it's boom, and you're done.
Sure, that's actually a really good point. You know, tomorrow's our session on new apartment construction. We'll be talking a lot about leasing, but maybe you can comment on the difference between leasing up an apartment building and leasing up a student housing property. In the apartment business, if you're going to build 300 units, it's going to take you a year if you're working really hard to get this thing filled up. If you build 300 units in a student housing project, you could be full your first September. In fact, you should be full your first September.
You better
You
be
better
full
be
of
full
it
your
before
first
you lease it.
September. Yes. Yeah. What happens when you miss September? Let's talk about the dark side of the business. I mean, it's never happened to you, but for other developers.
Yeah, it hasn't happened to us yet, but it would be a very bad meeting.
Yeah. Greg, just comment on that.
Yeah, Derek, I've had nightmares about that topic. Fortunately for us, like Armond, that hasn't happened to us either. But students don't move in mid-semester. Students don't move in oftentimes in January for the spring semesters. You got a world of hurt.
Yeah. It happened on a project I was working on. It delayed the project a year. It was expensive.
There's a U.S. REIT that has a lot of experience delivering late.
Yes.
You can ask them how they handle it.
Now, from an on-campus perspective, though, Derek, it is, and let me preface this by saying, If it's a demolition project and replacement housing, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't come in for August lease up. Meaning they have the flexibility to keep the residence halls open until the spring semester, and you can deliver presumably around Christmas for use in January. Not ideal, but that has happened.
Okay, next we have a question from the audience. Darryl McCullough?
This is on or not.
Yeah, it's on, Joe. It's on.
I've heard about the shuttle versus the 10-minute walk. It's always been a question for me, and we reference the South as one of the reasons that we're into campus type environments, but we can go an hour from here to Buffalo and see some beautiful new projects that are very low rise, spread out, and they're working with shuttles in 3 to 5 mile radiuses from the university. From a visionary standpoint, we talked about in entertainment districts too. Are we in Canada getting too trapped in a mentality of 10-minute walk, where in fact, if we had the vision, will the market come to us?
Great question.
For all three of you, because Brad's in that trap right now in a lot of cases. So.
We're
Not all
not,
at once. No, go ahead. Yeah.
we're not real excited about doing satellite properties anymore. Because kind of what's happened in the U.S. markets is, we the industry built 3 miles from campus, satellite locations, and it worked. Now what's happening is the builders are saying, well, let's go in, buy the more expensive sites that's, right on the beach, and basically what that's going to do, since we have stabilized or balanced markets, it's just going to cannibalize the properties that are further out, and they're getting tougher and tougher to lease every year because of the new competition that's closer in.
Yeah, I would simply add that as a visionary, if you're thinking about this through your student housing lens, I would say bring your vision closer to campus, because there's not a lot of student housing developed here in Canada. So the aggregation or assemblage of sites, I would use your vision there, because to Armond's point, somebody's going to in the coming years, and if you're out here away from campus, you're going to be the one to suffer.
Yeah,
Right.
I think you guys are both right. You just got to be careful and really understand the marketplace. When it comes time for shuttles, we don't have a lot of them. So,
I agree with you, but I've seen projects that have been fairly far away from the university quite successful. An example is in London, Ontario. The developer called us in to do a feasibility study. We said, don't build it, it's too far. He built it anyways, and it worked. But it was close to the bars, right? The students got a bus pass in their student union dues, and it worked.
absolutely, I think. Armond mentioned that they provide a 2 a.m. bus.
Yeah, I
would
love
have
that
used
idea.
that when I was
Yeah,
in
yeah,
university.
yeah.
So, I think it's a good model.
And again, we're not saying that that's a bad model. We're just saying that you got to be careful with it, because if you're the first student purpose built, and you're that far from campus and you're dependent upon the transportation, be careful, because somebody's going to come in with a vision of buying up something close to campus and putting up a 20-story tower that's not reliant on transportation, and that's going to be an interesting situation to see that play out.
Okay, great. So what are the main investor concerns about Canadian student housing development versus those in the U.S.? So would you put in a pool, for example, in Canada? I mean, we have 2 seasons, right? Winter and July. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, probably not. I think what we do is we do a lot of focus groups in communities with which we are considering student housing. And by focus groups, we're pulling in students to give us their opinions of what they would rent, what would sell to them. I don't know that I would do a pool up here. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because you can't use it very long. But
Would
the
you do a hot
investment
tub?
is big.
Would you do a 24-person hot tub?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'd probably do a couple of those. No, but I think the other amenities is where you would need to focus in these colder environments. I'm sure if you're going to Buffalo, you're probably not seeing a lot of resort-style pools on these off-campus
We are.
product. You are seeing a lot of them?
ACC put in a pool in the first one. By the time they got to the third one, they just put in the 24-person hot tub.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm sure people are using the hot tub more than they are the pool.
Okay, great. Armond, any comments?
Make the amenities match where you are.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How do you make the amenities match where you're at? Sort of an easy thing to say. What do you mean by that? You got to push these panelists. You know, use general answers sometimes. Boom,
Well,
dig
I
down.
mean,
Okay.
what do college kids that live up here in Canada want? And it's probably not the big swimming pool. You know, I don't know what sports are, you know, certainly study rooms are important.
Beer pong.
Ping pong, yeah.
Beer
Depends on
pong.
the school, yeah.
Well,
Just kidding.
we don't want to serve any alcohol, so the beer pong is out. But you know, I don't know if it's pool. You know, when I say pool, I mean billiards. I don't know if it's bowling alleys. I don't know what it is, but you know, we're looking for the developers to tell us what are the amenities that Canadian students like. You know, maybe I threw out bowling alley. I don't know.
I understand.
But I mean, things like that there's probably more indoor activity because of the weather, especially during the school year.
Yes.
Because, like you say, it's winter in July, and
Yes.
July the school's not in session.
So, Greg?
Yeah, but if you're further off campus and you have the opportunity to have more real estate, perhaps you do a running trail that weaves through your property. That's a unique amenity that isn't otherwise found everywhere you go. You know, being creative with amenities, but we find success in polling the students and see what would be attractive to them.
Would you allow dogs at your property or pets at your property?
Not if we don't have to. No.
Everybody has a dog. You either have them on lease with a deposit and an extra rent, or you have them without the.
Right, but
you're going to get them one way or the
you,
other.
You do accept pets in your student housing properties?
You have to.
You have to. Brad, you ever seen that here? People accept pets? I don't think I ever have.
Well, landlords try and you know, avoid that situation, but you know, the Landlord-Tenant Act says you can't deny a person with a pet, but there are always ways to try and avoid it.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about customizing the purpose-built student house off campus to the university and to the particular town or to the Canadian city, right? Oftentimes when we're advising developers, we'll say something like this. So we developed a site in Montreal near McGill University, probably one of the best schools in the country. They have a very strong music program. So we put in soundproof music studios. So we tied it to the school, right? We were looking at doing a development at George Brown College. They have a very good culinary course, sort of world famous. So we were going to put in a cooking kitchen, right, or something along that lines. We're advising some clients who are looking at building near Ryerson University, where they have a lot of graphic design programs, fashion design programs, and things like that, artistic type programs, to put in a studio, you know, with natural light and with granite countertops. When the students come with their X-Acto knives to cut the fabric, you don't ruin all the, you know, all the kitchen counters and things like that. I'm looking for ideas like that, customizing this thing to the site and to the school.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, okay, so now the big question. I'm going to ask you to give advice here today, something you've never said publicly before. I'll make it easy in Canada. You've only been here once, so almost anything's going to work. Yeah. Give some good advice to these people about developing student housing.
The dirty secret of student housing is basically we just rent to sophomores and juniors.
Well, what does that mean, by the way, sophomore and junior? Second and third year?
Second and third year.
Okay, so you're saying your target market for this business is second and third year. First year's left to the school, second and third year's yours. What happens in fourth year?
Fourth year, they want to graduate. They don't want to be near the party anymore. They want to be off on their own. And our 3-4 bedroom type plans just don't appeal to seniors.
Interesting. Greg, one piece of advice you've never shared in public before.
Make real good friends with the municipality. Real good friends.
Why?
They can make your life really difficult, or they can make it that much easier on your project. So we interact and find it extremely important to interact with the different stakeholder groups at the municipality level. Another thing that is key is, because we live in Georgia, and if we just developed in our hometown, we'd be out of business. So we go all over the place, just like Armond does. But finding the local partners is critical too, and we never underestimate, if there are any civil engineers out here, we never underestimate your value to us in an off-campus setting, because you oftentimes are the key and the link to the municipality stakeholders for us. So,
Brad?
I would say measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, yes.
Always, revisit things, revisit properties, projects that you may have been interested in, because, there's always those key opportunities out there.
And the piece of advice I would give developers is you really have to drill down on the rent level. And most times when we've seen lease-ups done in student housing, they've exceeded their pro forma, right? And today, with cap rates being in the 5-6% range, $1 of NOI is, $18, $20 in terms of value. So students have money today. Their parents have money. We call them precious snowflake. We only have 1 or 2 children, right? And they're a little spoiled, and we'll continue to spoil them. We'll pay for that student housing. So if there's no student housing product in the marketplace, don't look at the surrounding rents and think that's the rent you're going to achieve in the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments, right? These students today have money, and they will pay that. So you'll see rents in Brad and Waterloo. What's the range in rents? And that's a city with a lot of student housing that's competitive. Just give me the range of rents.
About $550 to $700.
So $500 to $700 per bed, right? So now you're talking about a 4-bedroom apartment at $700, bringing in, $2,800, $3,000 per month. If you move that building into Montreal or Toronto or Ottawa, you're going to be significantly higher than that, $800, $900 per bed. So it's a business that's very location sensitive, but if you get it right, I think the returns can be very, very strong. Again, please help me in thanking the panel. You've been terrific. Thank you.